Hey guys! Tonight we embark on a slow and soothing journey into the ancient world, where beer wasn't just a drink, but a vital part of life, medicine, and culture. Picture the sun setting gently over the Nile, the warm air thick with the aroma of ripening barley, and the faint bubbling of fermentation in humble homes and grand temples alike. You probably won't survive this journey if you're expecting loud battles or epic pharaoh tales, but if you're ready to drift into calm with the soft story of ancient Egyptian beer, you're in the right place. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And don't forget to drop your location and local time in the comments below. There's a quiet charm in knowing where around the globe we're all unwinding together. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Beer in ancient Egypt was far more than a simple beverage. It was a daily necessity, a form of nutrition, a medicine, and a sacred offering. The people of the Nile Valley, from farmers to priests, relied on beer for sustenance and healing. Historical evidence shows that brewing dates back at least 5,000 years, making Egypt one of the earliest beer-producing civilizations. Archaeological finds reveal specialized brewing equipment and inscriptions praising beer's vital role. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some Egyptian brews included unusual ingredients like chamomile or breadcrumbs to aid fermentation and add flavor. The Egyptians also believed that beer carried divine essence, connecting it to their gods and rituals. Historians still argue whether beer's primary role was medicinal, social, or religious, but all agree it was woven deeply into their culture. So, as you drift closer to sleep, imagine the gentle hum of brewing vessels, the earthy scent of grain, and the soothing presence of a drink that nourished a civilization. You're comfortably settling in now. So let's slowly unpack the brewing techniques and ingredients that made ancient Egyptian beer such a unique and essential part of daily life. Unlike the sleek, filtered lagers we sip today, their brews were earthy, cloudy, and full of character, sometimes even a bit gritty, like a hearty porridge in a cup. The primary grains were barley and emmer wheat, staple crops along the Nile's fertile banks. The brewing process began with baking simple barley bread, which was then crumbled into water to start fermentation. Unlike modern brewing, they didn't use hops. Instead, natural wild yeasts kicked off the fermentation, creating a tangy, slightly sour flavor. The mixture would bubble gently for days, transforming slowly from grainy mash to a drinkable, mildly alcoholic brew. Interestingly, brewers sometimes added herbs and spices like coriander, dates, or even chamomile. These additions weren't just for flavor. They were believed to enhance health benefits or aid digestion. A quirky detail here is that some recipes included ingredients that might sound odd today, like animal dung, thought to introduce wild yeast and kickstart fermentation. It's a reminder of how brewing was as much about nature's whims as human skill. Women were often the master brewers, crafting beer in homes and small breweries. Brewing was deeply entwined with domestic life and even spirituality, as the act was sometimes seen as a sacred ritual connecting mortals with divine forces. A historical fact: archaeological digs have uncovered specialized brewing vessels dating back to Egypt's early dynastic period, highlighting the craft's importance. Historians still argue whether Egyptian brewing techniques influenced neighboring cultures or evolved independently. But it's clear this was an advanced and respected skill. As you listen to this slow unfolding of brewing history, imagine the warm Egyptian sun on mud brick rooftops where gentle hands tended to the bubbling mash. Each batch a small miracle of ancient science and tradition. You're drifting gently now. So let's explore how ancient Egyptian beer wasn't just a refreshing drink, but a crucial nutritional staple. Imagine the grueling workdays under the blazing sun. Farmers, builders, laborers, all needing sustenance that could keep them going. Beer provided exactly that: calories, vitamins, and a safe, hydrating liquid. Barley and emmer wheat, the beer's base, were packed with carbohydrates and proteins. When fermented, the grain's nutrients became more accessible, making beer a vital source of energy. It's estimated that for some laborers, beer contributed up to half their daily caloric intake. The beer they drank wasn't crystal clear or bubbly, but thick and porridge-like, often consumed through straws to avoid the gritty sediment. Drinking beer was sometimes safer than water because the fermentation process killed many harmful bacteria, a comforting thought when clean water wasn't guaranteed. This made beer both food and drink, hydrating and nourishing simultaneously. An amusing historical fact: workers building the pyramids received daily beer rations as part of their wages, essentially paid in brew. The government controlled beer production to ensure the workforce remained healthy and productive, underscoring beer's importance beyond mere enjoyment. Historians still argue whether beer's nutritional role outweighed its religious and social significance, but it's clear that for everyday Egyptians, it was a cornerstone of survival. So, as you nestle deeper, picture these workers pausing to sip their thick, sour beer, gathering strength to build monuments that would echo through millennia, proof that sometimes a humble drink carries mighty stories. As your body relaxes further, let's move into the medicinal uses of beer in ancient Egypt, a subject that might surprise you with its breadth and subtlety. Beer wasn't just nourishment, it was a trusted remedy, a kind of liquid pharmacy brewed in homes and temples alike. Ancient Egyptian medical texts, like the famed Eber's Papyrus, list beer as a treatment for a range of ailments: stomach pains, digestive troubles, and even eye infections. One remedy involved mixing beer with natron, a natural salt. To soothe irritated eyes sounds odd today, but made perfect sense then. Beer's mild alcohol content and fermentation process gave it antiseptic qualities, making it a safe alternative to potentially contaminated water. But beer was also used as a base for concoctions containing herbs, honey, and spices, tailored to specific needs. Think of it as an early form of flavored medicine, designed to heal and comfort simultaneously. A quirky tidbit in some cases, beer was even administered as an anesthetic during minor surgeries or dental work, although we might prefer modern anesthetics today. The soothing warmth and mild intoxication helped dull pain, allowing doctors and patients a bit of relief. Historians still debate how effective these treatments truly were. Was beer's medicinal reputation based mainly on its chemical properties, or was it amplified by cultural beliefs and rituals? Either way, beer's role in ancient Egyptian medicine illustrates a fascinating intersection of science, tradition, and spirituality. So as you drift deeper into this calm narrative, imagine yourself as an ancient patient sipping this healing brew, trusting in a remedy that bridged the practical and the sacred. Now that you're drifting deeper into this slow history, let's explore the sacred and ritualistic role of beer in ancient Egyptian religion. Beer wasn't just a medicinal tonic or a staple of daily life. It was a divine gift, woven into ceremonies and offerings that connected mortals to gods. The goddess Hathor, often called the mistress of drunkenness, was intimately linked with beer. She was believed to have taught humanity the art of brewing, making beer a sacred symbol of fertility, joy, and protection. Temples often brewed beer for ritual use, and priestesses played key roles in this sacred craft, blending brewing with spiritual devotion. During festivals, beer was consumed in controlled, ritualistic amounts to induce a mild intoxication, helping worshippers open their minds and hearts to divine presence. This wasn't careless partying. It was a slow, reverent process akin to meditation, creating communal bonds and spiritual openness. Beer also played a vital part in funerary customs. Tombs often contained jars of beer intended to nourish the deceased in the afterlife, a comforting reminder that even beyond death, the pleasures and necessities of life continued. This gave beer a symbolic role as a bridge between worlds. Life and afterlife intertwined by the simple act of sharing a drink. Here's a quirky fact. Some funerary texts describe beer as the liquid bread of the gods, emphasizing its importance both physically and spiritually. Historians still debate whether beer's religious role drove its production or vice versa. Was beer primarily a sacred offering that evolved into daily consumption, or a common drink elevated by spiritual significance? Either way, beer's place in ancient Egyptian ritual life shows how deeply entwined it was with the rhythms of human existence. As you drift toward sleep, picture flickering temple lights, soft chants, and the gentle clink of cups, an ancient lullaby to soothe body and soul. As you sink further into calm, let's explore the social and economic currents that carried beer through the heart of ancient Egyptian society. Beer wasn't just a sacred elixir or medicinal tonic. It was a social equalizer and a vital economic commodity that kept the wheels of civilization turning. For the everyday worker, beer was an indispensable part of the daily wage. Laborers building the pyramids or tending fields received beer rations, ensuring they had energy to endure grueling work. It wasn't a luxury, it was sustenance and payment rolled into one frothy package. This created a system where brewing and distribution were integral to state function, with granaries and breweries carefully managed to maintain supply. Beer's economic importance extended to trade, with barley and beer goods moving along routes stretching across Egypt and beyond. Even elite households enjoyed special brews, often flavored with honey or herbs, reflecting status but never entirely separating the drink from the people. A curious fact, some papyri record disputes over beer rations, showing how seriously both workers and officials took the drink. Missing a beer ration was no small matter. It could impact morale and productivity. Historians still debate to what extent beer's distribution was a tool of social control, with some arguing that controlling beer supplies helped reinforce political power and social hierarchy. Others see it primarily as a practical necessity for maintaining a stable workforce. So as your eyelids grow heavy, imagine the steady clinking of jars and the rhythmic cadence of workers' toil, all buoyed by the humble, sustaining brew that was the lifeblood of ancient Egypt. You're almost completely relaxed now, so let's gently delve into a fascinating aspect of ancient Egyptian beer, the pivotal role women played in its creation. Brewing wasn't just a chore, it was a cultural craft deeply tied to gender roles and spiritual significance. Women, often referred to as brewsters, were the primary brewers in ancient Egypt. Brewing beer was part of domestic life, passed down from mother to daughter, blending skill and tradition. It was one of the few respected trades open to women, giving them a vital role in society's nourishment and economy. Brewing beer also connected women to religious practices. Some priestesses oversaw brewing as a sacred duty, linking their craft to the goddess Hathor and other deities associated with fertility and life. This blend of practical skill and spiritual service made brewing a powerful symbol of female agency. A quirky tidbit archaeological evidence even suggests that some female brewers enjoyed considerable wealth and status, showing that their craft was more than just household labor. It could be a source of influence and economic power. Historians still debate how widespread female control over brewing was, whether it was a strictly domestic task or if women dominated commercial brewing too. Regardless, it's clear that women's connection to beer shaped much of its history and cultural meanings. So as you drift closer to sleep, picture these skilled women tending bubbling vats, their hands steady and practiced, weaving together nourishment, culture, and spirituality with each batch. As you drift deeper, let's slowly explore the lively yet slow-paced celebrations where beer took center stage ancient Egyptian festivals. These gatherings were vibrant social events, where beer flowed gently and ritual intoxication fostered community bonds and spiritual connection. During festivals honoring gods like Hathor or Osiris, beer was consumed in measured amounts to induce mild intoxication, not wild revelry. This sacred drinking was a way to break down barriers between humans and gods, allowing worshippers to experience a sense of divine presence. Imagine the soft glow of oil lamps, the hum of chants, and the communal sharing of beer as a slow, sacred ritual. Beer also acted as social glue, bringing together different classes in shared celebration. It was a time when the usual hierarchies softened, and the common joy of drinking bonded people in slow camaraderie. A quirky fact, some festivals featured competitions to brew the best beer, with brewers vying for honor and recognition in a slow, respectful manner. And yes, there were even beer gods personified in certain ceremonies, reminding us that beer was truly woven into every thread of life. Historians still debate how central beer consumption was to the religious experience versus its role as a social lubricant. Was ritual intoxication primarily spiritual, or simply a socially acceptable way to enjoy communal drinking? The answer likely lies somewhere in the amber haze between both. As you imagine the warmth of those ancient festivals, let the slow rhythm of communal cheer and sacred brewing carry you gently toward rest. You're almost at full rest now, so let's quietly enter the somber yet comforting realm of funerary practices, where beer accompanied Egyptians on their journey beyond life. In a culture deeply connected to the afterlife, beer was more than just a physical drink. It was a symbol of sustenance and comfort for the departed. Tombs and burial sites often included jars of beer, intended to nourish the deceased's spirit in the afterlife. The Egyptians believed that life continued beyond death, and just as the living enjoyed beer, so too should the dead. These jars were carefully crafted, sometimes inscribed with blessings or symbols to ensure the soul's safe passage and comfort. One fascinating detail is that some tomb paintings depict beer brewing scenes, suggesting that the process itself was part of the spiritual landscape, a ritual to maintain the cycle of life and death. This gave beer a symbolic role bridging worlds, linking the earthly with the divine. Historians still debate whether the beer included in tombs was purely symbolic, or if it was occasionally consumed in rituals during funerary ceremonies. Regardless, the presence of beer in funerary contexts underscores its deep importance, not just as a drink, but as a vital thread in the fabric of Egyptian spirituality and daily life. As you drift deeper, imagine the quiet solemnity of the tombs, the gentle offering of beer as a timeless gesture of care and continuity, soothing both the living and the dead. As you continue your descent into gentle sleep, let's consider how beer fueled the labor that built Egypt's greatest monuments. Beyond its spiritual and nutritional roles, beer was a powerful tool in the hands of kings and laborers alike, keeping monumental projects moving forward with steady energy. Workers building the pyramids, temples, and canals were often paid in beer rations, These rations were essential, providing both hydration and calories in the demanding heat. The beer was thick, nutritious, and sustaining a far cry from the watered-down beers common today. It's easy to imagine the weary worker, grateful for the familiar taste and mild buzz after a hard day's toil. What's striking is how organized this system was. Records from the time detail the quantities of beer distributed daily to workers, showing that it was a carefully managed resource. Beer was as important as bread or wages. It was a staple that kept the gears of the empire turning. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some workers reportedly enjoyed a beer bonus for exceptional work, hinting that beer was not only sustenance, but also motivation. This echoes the idea of beer as a social equalizer. It was both reward and necessity. Historians still debate how much beer contributed to workers' health and morale. Did it genuinely improve productivity? Or was its distribution more about social control and appeasement? The evidence leans toward both, reflecting the multifaceted role beer played. As you drift into rest, picture the vast construction sites bathed in sunset, the steady murmur of laborers sharing beer, a humble but mighty force behind Egypt's timeless wonders. As you glide further into this restful journey, let's pause to admire the symbolism of beer in Egyptian art and hieroglyphs' quiet visuals that whisper stories of daily life and divine connection. Beer wasn't just consumed, it was immortalized in the imagery that adorned tombs, temples, and papyri. Hieroglyphs often depict jars of beer alongside offerings of bread and wine, symbolizing nourishment for both body and soul. Scenes of brewing and drinking appear in tomb paintings, illustrating the centrality of beer in both life and death. These images offer a slow, deliberate glimpse into how Egyptians valued beer as a gift from the gods, essential for ritual and sustenance. A quirky detail: some depictions show beer as a kind of sacred liquid gold, poured generously during feasts or funerary rites. The iconography often emphasizes the communal and spiritual aspects of beer rather than its intoxicating effects, highlighting its role as a bridge between the human and divine realms. Historians still argue how much symbolism influenced the actual practices of beer consumption. Was beer more of a sacred emblem in art? Or was it a genuinely everyday luxury? The answer likely blends both, with imagery serving to elevate beer's status in society. As your eyelids grow heavier, picture these ancient scenes slowly unfolding, rich with meaning, inviting you to rest with the comforting knowledge that beer was more than a drink. It was a vital part of an ancient story still told through symbols. As you sink further into calm, let's explore how ancient Egyptian beer compares to other early brews from around the world. While beer was everywhere, Egypt's version was unique, shaped by its climate, crops, and culture, a slow-brewed tale of regional ingenuity. Egyptian beer was thick, porridge-like, and often unfiltered, unlike the clearer, hop-flavored brews that emerged in later European traditions. The lack of hops meant the beer had a different taste profile: earthy, sour, and slightly sweet from added dates or herbs. This was a beverage to be savored slowly, more about nourishment and ritual than quick intoxication. In Mesopotamia, a contemporary civilization, beer was also central, but brewed using different grains and fermentation methods. Meanwhile, in China, fermented rice drinks were popular, showing the diverse ways human societies turned to fermentation for sustenance and celebration. A quirky tidbit: some early beers elsewhere incorporated wildflowers or spices unfamiliar to Egyptians, highlighting regional flavors. Egyptian brewers might have scoffed at these, preferring their familiar barley mash and traditional methods. Historians still debate how much cultural exchange influenced brewing techniques between these ancient civilizations. Was Egypt an innovator, or did it adopt and adapt brewing practices from neighbors? The archaeological record leaves room for interpretation, but what's clear is that beer was a universal comfort, crafted locally with unique signatures. As you drift off, imagine the warm Egyptian sun contrasted with distant lands' cool rivers, all connected by the humble yet profound craft of brewing a shared human ritual that gently carries us to rest. You're floating deeper now, so let's consider the decline and transition of Egyptian beer traditions over time. As Egypt changed through conquests, cultural shifts, and the march of new technologies, the ancient brewing customs evolved, sometimes fading, sometimes blending into new forms. The arrival of Greek and Roman influences introduced new tastes and brewing techniques. Wine began to overshadow beer in elite circles, seen as a more refined drink, while beer remained popular among common folk. Brewing methods slowly adapted, becoming more standardized and sometimes more commercialized. Interestingly, some ancient beer recipes were lost or altered significantly during these periods. The thick, porridge-like beers gave way to clearer, filtered varieties, closer to what we might recognize today. Yet, remnants of traditional brews survived in rural communities, echoing the old ways. A quirky fact: medieval Egyptian texts mention bread beer as a rustic, common drink, hinting at continuity even as tastes shifted. It's a testament to beer's deep roots that it endured despite changing fashions. Historians still debate whether the decline of traditional Egyptian beer was due to cultural assimilation, economic factors, or shifts in agricultural priorities. The truth likely lies in a complex mix of all these forces, reflecting the fluid nature of history itself. So as you sink further into sleep, imagine the slow transformation of an ancient tradition, like a river meandering, changing course, but always flowing, carrying the essence of beer through time and culture. As your breathing slows, let's drift into the discoveries of modern archaeology, revealing the hidden secrets of ancient Egyptian beer. Recent digs and scientific analysis have peeled back layers of time, offering fresh glimpses into how this sacred brew was made, consumed, and cherished. Archaeologists have uncovered brewing vats, bread molds, and residue analyses that confirm ancient recipes. Chemical studies show traces of barley, wheat, and even herbal additives like coriander, confirming texts describing medicinal and ceremonial brews. These findings bridge the millennia, connecting you with brewers who shaped history with patient hands. One quirky discovery is the identification of yeast strains unique to Egyptian brewing sites, suggesting a localized brewing ecosystem, a kind of ancient microbrewery, long before the term existed. This tells us the process was surprisingly sophisticated and deeply embedded in local ecology. Historians and scientists still debate how widespread commercial brewing was versus home-based production. Was beer mostly a household craft or an organized industry? Evidence points to both, reflecting a vibrant culture of brewing that touched every layer of society. As you drift toward deep rest, picture these excavations quietly revealing ancient pots and grains, whispers from the past echoing softly, inviting you to sleep within their timeless story. You're nearing the final stretch of this gentle journey. So let's reflect on why ancient Egyptian beer still captivates and soothes us today. Beyond the bubbles and grains, it's a story of connection between people, nature, and time. Beer's slow craft mirrors the patience needed in life, the ancient brewer's care, the ritual of fermentation, and the communal sharing remind us to pause, savor, and find comfort in simple acts. It teaches us that nourishment comes not just from food, but from tradition and connection. Modern craft beer culture echoes this heritage, blending ancient methods with new tastes. But more importantly, the story invites us to slow down, to honor the rhythms of life, and to find peace in continuity. A quirky thought every time you sip a beer. You're tasting a legacy, 5,000 years of human ingenuity and warmth. Historians still debate many details of ancient Egyptian brewing, but its enduring spirit invites us to rest, relax, and dream of distant shores where barley and water first met in gentle, bubbling harmony. As you drift softly toward sleep, let this quiet story cradle you, reminding you that sometimes the slowest histories are the most soothing. Now, as your thoughts begin to soften and your breathing slows, let the gentle story of ancient Egyptian beer wrap around you like a warm, comforting blanket. This isn't just a tale of grains and fermentation. It's a reminder of the quiet rhythms that connect us across millennia. Imagine the sun setting over the Nile, the slow bubbling of a brew in a humble mud brick home, and the gentle hands of brewers crafting a drink that sustained a civilization. The ancient Egyptians taught us that nourishment is not just physical, it's spiritual, social, and emotional. Beer was medicine, ritual, and sustenance, a drink that soothed bodies and souls alike. It flowed through their festivals, temples, and tombs, bridging the gap between life and afterlife. As you let your eyelids grow heavier, picture yourself drifting on the slow currents of history, carried gently by the stories of barley, water, and patience. These tales are soft echoes of human connection, reminding us that even in the quietest moments, there is depth and meaning. So, breathe deeply and let go. The ancient brewers have tended their fires for thousands of years, and now it's time for you to rest. Let the simple, steady pulse of this slow history guide you into a peaceful, restorative sleep. Good night.